All right, so welcome to another deep dive. And today we're going deep into the world of Jon Jones.
Yeah, one of the most, I think he's probably the most fascinating figure in MMA history.
Definitely talented.
Oh, yeah. Unbelievable talent, but also just so many controversies and just things that make you kind of shake your head, you know?
Yeah, it's really a story that makes you think about what defines greatness.
Exactly.
You know, can we separate the artist from the art? Can we just look at what he does in the Octagon and
appreciate it
and say that this guy is one of the best to ever do it?
Yeah.
All that stuff. And so we're going to try to tackle that today. We're going to look at Jon Jones. We've got this document titled jonjones.pdf, and we'll go through and see what we can find out about him.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see how, you know, his upbringing, his personal life, and all of that has informed who he is as a fighter and as a person today.
Yeah, so let's start right at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Working class family, Rochester, New York. Not really where you think of a UFC champion coming from.
Not exactly a fighting hotbed.
Right. And his father, a pastor who initially, at least, wasn't a big fan of Jon getting into the fighting world.
Oh, the irony, right. I mean, talk about internal conflict. You've got this young Jon drawn to combat, to this very physical expression of, I guess, dominance. And then you have his father, this figure of spiritual guidance, advocating for a completely different path. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure, I think, to be in that situation. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about expectation and rebellion. I think that's something that we see in a lot of young athletes, especially coming from a family with maybe strong religious convictions.
It's like they almost have to defy this preordained path to pursue their true passion.
Yeah, and it's like this need to prove himself. It comes up again and again throughout his life. I mean, even in high school, he had to overcome, some academic hurdles to even join the wrestling team.
It shows his determination, right? He wasn't given anything, had to fight for every opportunity. And I think that fighting spirit, that relentlessness, it's what pushed him to the top.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think you see that carry through, right? I mean, he gets into MMA and he becomes the youngest UFC champion in history. What, 23 years old?
Yeah, meteoric rise. But you know what often comes with that kind of success at such a young age?
Trouble.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we see those early signs. I mean, 2012 DUI charges.
Yeah.
So it's almost like there's two narratives unfolding at the same time here.
Yeah.
You've got Jon Jones, this unstoppable force in the Octagon, and then
this other Jon Jones struggling to keep it together outside of it.
Yeah.
Classic case of a young guy grappling with fame and fortune, right?
Yeah.
The pressure, the temptations, it can be overwhelming for anybody, but especially someone like Jones who, as we talked about, already has this need to push boundaries.
Yeah, it's like he's almost wired for self-destruction in a way.
It's like he can't help himself.
And then it all culminates in that 2015 hit and run.
Yeah, that's where things take a really dark turn. Felony charge, stripped of his title. The consequences are huge. And that carefully crafted public image of the unbeatable champion, it shatters.
Gone. Just like that.
Yeah, it's a defining moment in his career, for sure. And it raises some serious questions about his character. Questions that I don't think we can ignore.
Questions that I think still linger today. And it wasn't just the legal ramifications either, right? I mean, it really impacted his personal life. Strained relationships with family, with former training partners. It really seemed to test his support system.
It's like the pressure cooker of his life just exploded, you know? And I think what's really interesting here is how this very public scrutiny starts to intersect with those more private struggles we were talking about earlier. The pressure to live up to expectations, his father's disapproval. It all comes together. Yeah,
it's almost like the hit and run incident becomes this catalyst, bringing all these unresolved issues to the surface.
Right, and during this time, you see the destructive nature of his inner demons, you know? He's battling substance abuse, he's facing multiple suspensions, and he's constantly under the microscope of public scrutiny. It's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, and there's this emotional weight that he's carrying, too.
Oh, absolutely. And the document goes into some detail about this. You know, his father, despite being a pastor, was often absent because of work. His mother was dealing with some serious health problems. It paints a picture of a young man who may have lacked that consistent, stable support system during those really crucial years.
It's got to be tough. I mean, that lack of support, combined with the immense pressure to succeed, it could definitely lead to a feeling of isolation, like you're all alone, even when you're surrounded by fans and accolades.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that even those who seem to have it all can still be struggling with some pretty deep-seated emotional vulnerabilities.
So at this point, it feels like Jones's career, and maybe even his life, are spiraling downwards.
It's like a classic rise and fall story, you know? But what makes Jon Jones's story so compelling is that it doesn't end there. In fact, I think this period of darkness, this confrontation with his own demons, it sets the stage for one of the most incredible comebacks in sports history.
You're talking about his return to the UFC in 2018.
Exactly. He comes back, reclaims the light heavyweight title against Alexander Gustafsson. But it's more than just a win, you know? It's a statement. Like he's saying Jon Jones, the fighter, is back. And maybe, just maybe, he's learned from his mistakes.
What a moment that must have been for him. Stepping back into the octagon and proving to the world, and maybe more importantly, to himself, that he could still compete at the highest level.
It was a turning point, not just in his career, but in his personal journey as well. He had faced those demons, battled addiction, and come out on the other side with, it seems, a renewed sense of purpose.
Yeah, and it feels like his fighting style evolved during this period as well. Like he's not just relying on raw talent anymore.
Yeah. It's impressive, right? You see him become more strategic, more calculated, more patient even. Like he's finally harnessed all of his potential, physically and mentally.
And he goes on a tear. I mean, defending that title over and over, breaking records left and right. It's like he's driven by this need to prove himself. Not just to the critics, but maybe to himself as well.
He's rewriting his own story. He's not that reckless young champion prone to self-destruction anymore. He's a veteran, a master of his craft, determined to solidify his legacy as the greatest light heavyweight of all time.
The GOAT, exactly. And in 2021, another twist. I mean, this is Jon Jones we're talking about. He's always got to be pushing the boundaries. Right. So what's the next mountain to climb for someone who's already conquered everything in their division?
He does the unthinkable, vacates the light heavyweight title and announces his move up to heavyweight.
Wow.
I know, right? It's a power move. Like he's saying, I've dominated this division, now I'm coming for the biggest, baddest guys in the sport.
It's a big statement.
It is. It speaks volumes about his ambition, that unwavering drive to push himself beyond his limits. He could have stayed at light heavyweight, kept winning, cemented his GOAT status in that division. But that's not Jon Jones. Yeah. He needs that challenge, that obstacle to overcome. And the heavyweight division, that's Mount Everest.
That's the ultimate test. And think about the potential matchups. Francis Ngannou, Stipe Miocic, those fights could redefine the sport.
And Jon Jones, he wants to be at the center of it all, test himself against the best, prove that he can conquer any challenge, any obstacle that stands in his way.
It's really like watching a Shakespearean drama unfold, you know? You've got the tragic hero, the flawed genius, the constant pursuit of redemption, and through it all, this undeniable athletic brilliance that you just can't ignore.
It goes way beyond sports, you know? It's about the human condition, the capacity for both greatness and self-destruction, that never-ending struggle to reconcile our past with our present.
It's why Jon Jones is so captivating. He makes us confront our own biases, our own ideas about what it means to be a hero, a villain, a human being trying to navigate this crazy world.
He's a walking contradiction, champion with a troubled past, fighter who achieved greatness while battling his own demons, a man who has inspired and disappointed millions.
And now, as he enters this new chapter in his career, this heavyweight chapter, the questions about his legacy become even more interesting.
Right. Definitely. Will he conquer this new challenge? Will he finally find that redemption he seems to crave? Or will his past come back to haunt him and derail everything?
We can only wait and see. But one thing's for sure, Jon Jones's story is far from over. He's still fighting, still evolving. He's writing the next chapter, and we as spectators, we get to grapple with the complexities of his journey, the contradictions of his character, and that age-old question, can we truly separate the art from the artist?
But I think the thing that we were talking about before we started recording is that, you know, he also does some philanthropic work, which is often overlooked.
It is, yeah. It's easy to get caught up in the drama, right? The wins and the losses, all the legal stuff. But, you know, he does give back to the community, especially in his hometowns of Rochester and Albuquerque.
He's been involved in some really positive initiatives, and I think that adds another layer to his character, don't you think? This desire to use his influence for good, to kind of balance the scales maybe, make amends for some of the things he's done in the past.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about the motivations behind it, though. I mean, how much of it is genuine altruism and how much is about repairing that public image?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question with any celebrity, right? Can you ever truly know someone's motivations?
Yeah.
I think what matters is he's taking action and he's using his platform to actually make a difference, whether it's out of the goodness of his heart or strategic PR. The impact's still positive.
Yeah, you're right. So that further complicates the legacy question, doesn't it? I mean, how will history remember Jon Jones? Will it be for his dominance in the Octagon, or will it also include these attempts to be a better person?
It's a good question. It really gets to the heart of that whole separating the art from the artist debate. Can we acknowledge the harm he's caused, but also recognize that he's trying to make things right?
It's tough. I don't think there's an easy answer.
Yeah, I don't think there is either.
But maybe that's okay.
Maybe
it's okay to just sit with the complexity of the contradictions, because, that's what makes his story so human, so relatable.
He is a flawed individual, just like all of us. He's made mistakes, he's stumbled, he's tried to pick himself back up, and through it all, he's never stopped fighting.
And I think that's what makes him such an interesting case study, I mean, it really gets to the heart of what it means to be a person.
Right, exactly.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into Jon Jones, I mean, for you, what were some of the key takeaways? What really stood out?
I think for me, it's a reminder that even extraordinary talent, true greatness, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's shaped by our environment, our personal struggles, the choices we make.
It's the whole nature versus nurture debate.
Exactly, yeah.
But in Jon Jones's case, he's playing out that debate on a global stage. I mean, he's not just fighting opponents in the Octagon, he's fighting perceptions, expectations, his own demons.
And maybe that's what makes him so relatable. I mean, we all have our own battles to fight, our own demons to confront.
He's just doing it with the whole world watching.
Exactly.
So what does Jon Jones's story tell us about talent, resilience, and, just the complexities of human nature? It's something I hope our listeners keep thinking about long after this deep dive is over.
I hope so too, because I think there's a lot to unpack there. Maybe we can't fully separate the art from the artist, but maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is that life, like a Jon Jones fight, is unpredictable, messy, and always full of surprises.
Yeah, I like that. And that's the beauty of it, right? The not knowing, the constant evolution, the possibility of redemption. I mean, Jon Jones's story may be unique, but the themes, the struggles, they resonate with all of us.
They really do. And as you go about your day, think about those themes. Think about the battles you're fighting, the choices you're making. Think about the legacy you're building.
I love that.
And remember, even when things are tough, even after you've stumbled, there's always a chance for a comeback, a fresh start.
It's never too late.
Never too late. It's a good point, and it makes you wonder, what's next for him. I mean, he's been hinting at maybe even a move to boxing, a fight against Tyson Fury. That would be wild.
I can't even imagine. But, it wouldn't surprise me. This is Jon Jones we're talking about. Yeah. Always pushing the boundaries, right?
Absolutely. And that's why I think his story, regardless of what happens next, it offers a really valuable lesson for all of us.
What?
It's about embracing the messiness of life.
Yeah.
Accepting that none of us are perfect. We all have our flaws, our contradictions. But that's what makes us human.
It's funny. We started this deep dive talking about separating the art from the artist. And I think what Jon Jones's story really highlights is that it's not always that simple,
Yeah.
Life isn't black and white. It's all these shades of gray. And maybe that's okay.
It is okay. I think it's more interesting that way.
Yeah, it makes it more real.
More real, more relatable.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Jon Jones, what final thoughts would you leave our listeners with?
I would just say this, Jon Jones, he's a fighter, he's an athlete, he's a complex individual, but ultimately he's a reflection of ourselves. We see our own struggles, our own aspirations in his journey, and that's what makes his story so compelling.
It's a story that's still being written, Who knows what twists and turns are coming next?
Right, and that's the exciting part.
So to all of our listeners out there, I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Jon Jones. And remember, life is a journey, not a destination. So embrace the ups and downs, learn from your mistakes, and never stop fighting for what you believe in.
Well said.
This has been The Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time.